My artwork is by Howardina Pindell, and it's from 1973 to 1974. It's at the Rose Art Museum at Brandeis University. It came from the Garth Greenan Gallery in New York, and it's called Grid Study Number 1, Removal 3/8, and Untitled. It's 3 different pieces. One is an acrylic on board, one is mixed media on paper, and another is sculpted metal wire and paper on a collage board. It also says, Pindell created the texture monochromatic surface of Removal 3/8 by folding the paper and scraping away paint and crayon that she previously applied. Through her use of black, Pindell introduces larger social, political, and art historical associations of black as a color and as a cultural signifier of race.
The piece that I chose was Till Burnham Wood, Removed to Dunsane, which was painted in 1991. The painting is mixed media on canvas and is about 51 by 81 inches. The artist is Howardina Pindell. The name of the piece of art comes from a passage of Macbeth, Act 5, Scene 3. Shakespeare's drama Macbeth is a story of betrayal, murder, and warfare, which inspired Pindell for this painting. The red hands in the painting represent America, and the bloody hands of Macbeth who committed murder for material gain. These red hands also belong to McBush, McWhale, McDowell, aka the President, the Vice President, and the Army Chief of Staff during the Gulf War. Shaped like a vinyl record with dark coloration, but upon further inspection it assumes the shape of a blossoming flower. The flower reminds of the symbol of love during the 60s when it was used to protest the Vietnam War. The boldest messages in the painting are "Have a nice day," immediately counteracted with the label "The Big Lie." The painting alludes to the idea that American citizens are mere objects of manipulation for politics to use and deceive. This is shown by inscriptions of "Have a nice day" and "The Big Lie." Other texts read propaganda, double standard, disease, and death. The words freedom and democracy are inverted to give disbelief to their truthfulness in context of Desert Storm, whose mission was to restore freedom and democracy to Kuwait. These words are also positioned on their backs to remind the viewer of language and how it can be manipulated into lifeless propaganda. The weapons of destruction are published all over the surface, such as cluster bombs, napalm, air explosives, selective strikes, mass murder, amputation, burning wells, polluted air, genocide, and mass graves. The smiling face at the center of the canvas could also represent Pac-Man, which is a metaphor for imperialism, which gobbles up and destroys another's culture and resources while presenting the world with an insecure smile. Pindell, painting Till Burnham Wood, Removed to Dunsane, explored a dark theme that brought out the best in paints.
I chose to research a piece by Pindell. This was located downstairs in the lower level of the Rose Art Museum. This piece doesn't have a title. It was created in 1974 and 1975. The piece is mixed media on canvas. This artwork is part of a collection of Beth Rudin DeWoody. Pindell named this collection Cut, Sewn, Adorned. In 1977, Pindell began making massive paintings through an entirely new process. Rather than using canvas stretched around a frame, Pindell cut unstretched canvases and sewed them together in a large quilt-like patchwork, and then covered in layers of hole-punched chads and paint. Pindell ultimately pushed this experiment further by working with unconventional materials such as glitter, powder, and perfume. The results entice the viewer in unexpected, multi-sensory ways. This painting is one of Pindell's first unstretched canvases, and it started a body of work that pushes the boundaries of traditional painting. The faint hand-drawn grid, which is underneath paint, sequins, and hole-punched paper, foreshadows later works, in which she cut canvases and sewed the pieces back together. People say that Pindell is attacking racism and gender inequality in a subtle way. She viewed the pressures, prejudices, and exclusions that were placed on her as an African American woman and artist as valuable themes and put them in her artwork. This piece was created post-Baroque period. This piece is still significant in today's daily lives. Racism and gender inequality are issues that we, as a human race, are still dealing with and trying to overcome. Artists are using their mediums to speak out. Same Love by Macklemore, and rappers like J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, and Kanye West speak out against gender, sexual, and racial inequalities in the world today.
These two art pieces were made in 1983 and 1986 to 1989. The first one is made out of tempera and postcards on paper and from the Newark Museum in New Jersey. The second one is made out of acrylic, tempera, and postcards on museum board. This was from the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts in Philadelphia, and it was from the Harold A. and Ann R. Sargenti collection of contemporary African American art in 2004. Pindell's visit to India in 1983 inspired a body of work composed of spirated and coiled images. She compares these works to a flowing river having neither beginning nor end. As for many of her travel-inspired works, Pindell interspersed strips of postcards with her own paintings. The elongated and distorted depictions of temples, monuments, and deities form a winding path mirroring Pindell's journey abroad. Pindell began her career in the 1960s, a time when the world and the very criteria of what constituted an art object were changing, giving rise to many contemporary art museums. Pindell, too, adapted to these new notions of art, moving away from her academic training to explore minimal aesthetics in paintings. She expanded her practice and became aware of the fact that she was the first African American woman to hold a curatorial post at the Museum of Modern Art. In fact, her honesty helped shed light on the inequities made by the art world in that era. Her 1989 essay, Art World Racism, a documentation, exposed the discriminatory practices of cultural institutions that excluded minority artists from galleries, museums, and publications. As this book goes to press, the nation is focused on events exposing the disempowerment of women in the workplace. Pindell started a trail for today's artists whose politics balance their artwork, and her work serve as a directive for how to engage in conversations around these still urgent issues.
This painting is being held at Brandeis University. The artist is Howardana Pindell. This painting was made in 1988, and the canvas has acrylic, painting, tempera, oil stick, blood, and paper. As you can see here, the painting is an autobiography of air. It's a representation of the fatal deaths caused by tear gas. Also, it references to the wide range of injustices that was caused by international wars and political conflicts. This painting really talks about the deaths, the violence, and slavery during this time. The artwork was made during the American art era. The significance of this painting is what happened in America with creating tear gas that assassinated many people and the injustices of slavery. It relates to today's culture because slavery, international war still happens today. We might not see slavery here in the U.S. like we used to, but it still happens somewhere else. Tear gas is still being used during wars such as the Israelite and Palestine conflict. The artist Pindell talks about Air CS560, which symbolizes her feelings about the universal struggles for dignity and the civil and human rights, as well as some of her personal agonies. She put her own blood into this big canvas, and the title refers to the tear gas that was manufactured in the U.S. This painting talks about what people did to slaves, such as the slave market, beating, and deportation. It also talks about people getting gassed and tortured.
Welcome to my crib. Come with me. No bullshit. So you got the record player here, feel me? Vintage, feel me? You got the, I don't even know what this is, but we got it though. Feel me? You got all this in here, no cap, TV on lock. If you trying to hit me on Fortnite, you already know where it's at. Feel me? I got my lamp, bro. What you know about collection storage, bro? You don't know nothing about that. Anyway, feel me? If you trying to get lit, pull up. What's the word? Hit my line, bro. No cap. Feel me? Welcome to the crib.
Yeah,